Want to keep up with the latest LEGO Maker 96.1 videos? Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. Hello everyone, LEGO Maker 96.1 here with another video. And welcome back to another On This Day in History. It was on this day in history that Fort Sumter was bombarded on by Confederate forces in Charleston, South Carolina, thus starting the American Civil War. Now, what led to the American Civil War was two things. Well, actually three things, really. One of them being the cause of slavery and states' rights, and the other was Lincoln in 1860. Now, the election of 1860 was, let's say, a real nail-biter at the time. At that time, Abraham Lincoln won the election because the Republican Party was created. It wasn't like we see today. It was completely different. Now, in response to Lincoln winning the election in 1860, South Carolina was the first state to do the unthinkable. It was the first state to secede from the Union on the 20th of December, 1860. And in January of 1861, more states would join South Carolina. Those states were Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and Louisiana. Texas would join them in February. And in that same month, in February of 61, they formed the Confederate States of America with Jefferson Davis, who was a United States Senator and a Mexican-American war veteran, to lead the Confederate States of America. Now, throughout 61, the newly formed Confederacy was seizing everything. Factories, military forts, anything, because they were preparing for war, because due to John Brown's raid in Harper's Ferry in 1859, which I covered on this day in history video, and many talks of slavery, the battle lines were already drawn. Now, mind you, America had slavery since the nation was founded, and it was a very sensitive issue, and even today, it is still a sensitive issue. Whether you watch documentaries and movie stuff on slavery, and even if you read books on slavery, you can read witness account and see how horrible slavery was. And I agree with them, slavery is wrong. Now, another thing was states' rights. States' rights also played a key factor in the Civil War also. Many people would argue, should we have a strong state government or a strong federal government? Well, Lincoln, he didn't want a war. He wanted peace. He wanted to bring the South together, despite what many people think. So, Lincoln sent supplies to the Union-held forts in the South, hoping it might bring some peace. Many Confederate soldiers as a declaration of war, and they decided to shoot on ships, which forced Union ships to be sent back. Now, there was one fort in particular that is held in Charleston, South Carolina, on an island called Sullivan's Island. Now, the fort, which I'm talking about right now, is Fort Sumter. And that fort was under the command of Major Robert Anderson. Now, there was a force of Confederate soldiers led by Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard, or PGD Beauregard, whatever you want to call him. Though, interesting fact, both of these men went to West Point. Anderson was the teacher, and Beauregard was the student. And think about it that way. The student is turning on the master. Gee, does that sound familiar? Now, at 4:30 in the morning of April 12th, 1861, the guns at all Southern-held ports fired on Fort Sumter, and it spoke for war. Civil War. A war that'll be A war that was turned bitter, violent, and devastating. Now, if you look at the casualties, there was none, because it was a bloodless opening. Although I did hear in Ken Burns' Civil War documentary that the only casualty was a Confederate horse. Yeah, a horse that was killed during the bombardment. How crazy was that? Now, the bombardment took 2 days. Since it started on the 12th, it ended on the 13th, with Anderson surrendering the fort, but without another shot being fired. And thus, war was on. And since Fort Sumter fell to Confederate forces, Lincoln decided to act right now, thus calling on volunteers to bring down the rebellion. And as a result, four more southern states would join the Confederacy. Those states was Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee, bringing the seceding states to 11. Now, many people would think there was 13 stars, was on the Confederate flag. Well, to tell you the truth, there were border states in the South also. Now, many of you may be familiar with the Mason-Dixon line. Well, those border states in the South has to do with Missouri, Kentucky, and even Maryland. Now, West Virginia didn't become a state until 1863, and it sided with the Union because that western part of the state didn't want to secede from the Union. They wanted to remain loyal to the Union. But when Virginia left, they went with them. But during the Civil War, West Virginia seceded from the Union. West Virginia seceded from the Confederacy, my mistake, and it joined the Union. And it sent troops from West Virginia to fight against the Confederates. Yeah, you didn't know that, did you? Now, there were many attempts to get Fort Sumter back in the Union in hands. It was bombarded on when the Anaconda Plan was put into effect by Winfield Scott, until eventually when William Sherman came up through the Carolinas in 64 to 65, Fort Sumter was abandoned and it fell into Union hands. And the American flag was flying once more over the walls of Fort Sumter. Now, before I go on any further, there's a difference of flags that was flown over Fort Sumter, and I'm going to go over that right now. Now, this image you see right here, this is the flag that was flown over the first day of Fort Sumter. This one was flown on the second day, which was brought down when Anderson surrendered the fort. So remember, this is the first day, this is the second day. There you go, got to clear that misconception. Now, if you watch many Civil War documentaries and movies, Fort Sumter was talked about a lot. Like, for example, in the end of book 1 of North and South, which was my mother's favorite series, mind you, they did Fort Sumter, and even talked about how Fort Sumter falling to the Union. And in the failed TV series of Point of Honor, they talked about Fort Sumter's bombardment and the beginning of the war. And that's pretty much it for this video. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like this, including many other videos that I've done on my channel, please feel free to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel, and turn on the bell notifications so that way you can be notified when I upload the next video. And as always, this is LEGO Maker 96-1, signing off.